Tonight, Shutdown Showdown, with the federal government set to close its doors at midnight this evening. Both parties, they're posturing and they're beginning the blame game. That as talks continue as we speak. We have got the very latest and we'll analyze who's going to get blamed if this all goes wrong. And then midnight's not only when his government might turn out the lights, it's also the start of an anniversary. 1 year since Donald Trump moved in the Oval Office. Man, has it felt longer than that. Record low numbers in polls. Bob Mueller's hot on his heels, sharing a shutdown in a face here. We will take a look and analyze year one and look ahead to what might be a very eventful year two. And later, after 3 high school students were stabbed, one even killed in the past 2 weeks, parents, they packed a school board meeting in New Rochelle, New York, angrily looking for answers. We're going to share some of what we heard. Plus, we're going to have the details of Governor Cuomo's congestion pricing plan. They are out, and we're going to tell you how much he wants to charge you just to drive into Midtown or further south. And trust me, if you thought there might have been some sticker shock, wait till you see the math. Okay. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Obviously, a lot to get to in the next 60 minutes. This could be a long night for lawmakers on Capitol Hill, and especially, one could argue, for one president of the United States. That's because unless lawmakers can hammer out a deal, and we're talking in less than 6 hours now, they are looking at a shutdown of the federal government. Now, there hasn't been a lot of progress through much of the day. We're told the talks are still ongoing, and there is a test vote likely to come to the Senate floor tonight here. We'll see where the members are on that. Even if they're still not close to a deal, we might see that happen. Now, here's a look at the Senate floor as we speak, where we have seen some activity today, but not enough to make anyone feel optimistic that we'll go off the cliff. The showdown in the Senate to keep the government open.
What has been shoehorned into this discussion is an insistence that we deal with an illegal immigration issue.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer summoned to the White House by President Trump. The fight over a 1-month funding bill that's already passed the House with no fix for the Dreamers.
We made some progress, but we still have a good number of disagreements. The discussions will continue.
The blame game in full effect. From President Trump, no response to shouted questions in the Rose Garden. He and Republicans are in charge, but they're accusing the Democrats of holding the country hostage over those 800,000 young immigrants.
Our position is that we want the DREAM Act, and we're willing to, we know our responsibility to secure our borders.
But Trump rejected the bipartisan Senate immigration deal that was on the table. The president tweeting this morning, Democrats want illegal immigration and weak borders. Shutdown coming? We need more Republican victories in 2018.
There's no way you could lay this at the feet of the President of the United States. He is actively working to try to get a deal.
A new ABC News Washington Post poll finds that 48% of Americans would blame Trump and the GOP for a shutdown versus the Democrats.
The last time one party held all the offices, the president, the House, and the Senate, and a shutdown occurred was in the 70s with Jimmy Carter. And that historical precedent, where Jimmy Carter ended up losing the presidency in 1980, is not a good precedent.
Now, about 40 minutes ago, President Trump, he weighed back into the mix here, suggesting what might be a possible compromise, but then again, who knows here? And he may tweet something while we're on the air that'll totally contradict it, but here goes. He tweeted, "Excellent preliminary meeting in Oval Office with Senator Schumer," not fake tears Schumer here, just Senator Schumer, "working on solutions for security and our great military, together with Senate Majority Leader McConnell and Speaker Ryan. Making progress, 4-week extension would be best." Now, many people think it might just be a few days as what might possibly, in a best-case scenario, come out tonight. But nonetheless, as you might expect, with the train just about to come off the tracks, lawmakers have been playing the blame game, each party saying the other, they're the one responsible for the shutdown, and they just can't seem to avoid. But the real question is, who will the public point fingers at if, in fact, the lights go out at midnight? And there's a lot of new polls out here asking that very question. Most look like the one that we just showed you. 48% of Americans say they'll blame the president and his party, Republicans in Congress. Less than 30%, 28%, saying the Democrats would, in effect, foot the bill. Another 18% say both parties equally to blame. Now, if there's anyone in Washington who should have seen that coming, Believe it or not, it's one Donald Trump. Now, he's weighed in on this topic before. We've been through shutdowns before in this country, most recently in 2013, and back then, private citizen Trump, he called in to do a TV interview, where else, Fox News, where, of course, he told Fox and Friends here that in no uncertain terms, look to the commander-in-chief.
Who's going to bear the brunt of the responsibility if indeed there is a shutdown of our government?
Well, if you say who gets fired, it always has to be the top. I mean, problems start from the top, and they have to get solved from the top, and the president's the leader, and he's got to get everybody in a room, and he's got to lead, and he doesn't do that. He doesn't like doing that. That's not his strength.
And that wasn't a one-off, by the way. He said something extremely similar just 2 years earlier in 2011. But let's go back to 2013. Republicans in Congress then, they shut the government down because they wanted a repeal of Obamacare, and President Obama wasn't about to sign off on that. This time, it's the president himself who has actively worked to squash a deal that would keep the government open. Remember, Trump, he hosted lawmakers from both parties at his request at the White House last week, and he asked for a bipartisan deal. Remember, he said, bring me a deal, I'll sign it, I'll take the heat for it, just bring it to my desk. Then, when a bipartisan group did exactly what he asked for last Thursday, a deal that included protection for the Dreamers, remember, he said he wanted a deal that was full of love? Well, that deal that included money for border security, Trump said, no way, no chance, no how. Rejected it out of hand. That was the meeting where the president, I should say, lashed out in a profanity-laden tirade, you know, S-holes, talking about Africa, Haiti, Salvador, and the rest. All hopes for a deal basically have been reduced to ashes ever since. Now, the worst part about this, especially for members of his own party in the GOP, is that they still don't even know what the president wants. That, in my opinion, is the biggest problem we have tonight. They don't know what deal they have to get for him to go along. And they don't know what he will and won't take here, and you don't even have to take my word for it. Maine Republican Senator Susan Collins, speaking for many, said, the president's role has been extraordinarily confusing, and I will leave it at that. And don't forget this comment from a frustrated Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Republicans in the Senate.
I'm looking for something that President Trump supports, and he's not yet indicated what measure he's willing to sign.
Again, that's the Senate Majority Leader, okay? Maybe our panel here can make more sense out of this than I can. Let's bring him in here tonight. We got Scott Levinson. Scott, the president and founder of the Advance Group, a New York City-based strategic consulting firm. He's also a commentator on local and national Democratic politics. Alongside Scott, Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. And Andrew, this stuff's changing by the minute here. The goalposts, as they say, keep moving. At this point, I think the president, who's now actively engaged, when he said earlier, it won't be my problem if this happens, it's Congress's job to figure this out. I think he's realized he's going to pay a price. We can debate how big a price, but he's going to pay a price for this. He'll take 2, 3, 4, 5 days if he can get it.
You know, if you're asking me to get inside the president's head, that's real estate I don't particularly want to occupy. But from that tweet that came out about a half an hour ago, he's talking about a 30-day extension. Schumer, we know, is looking for a 4 or 5 day extension. And it really just, you know, if this is going to be brinksmanship, it's really who's going to blink first on this sort of thing. If I were the Democrats, I wouldn't even consider 30 days unless you give me something. And the two things they're looking for right now are DACA and they're looking for the CHIP, the health insurance program. Give me one or the other and I'll entertain the idea of giving you 30 more days. But don't give me either one and no deal.
Is Andrew right? Because that's conventional wisdom, Dom, that, hey, look at the poll numbers, right? They're going to blame the president and blame the party. I will say, in the soundbite age that we live in with the attention span of fruit flies, it took him 2 sentences to explain what the Democrats were holding out for. The Republicans can say in 1 sentence, we want to keep the government open. Democrats are shutting it down if they don't get their illegal immigration funding. Is it an easier soundbite for them to say over and over and over again that, hey, we wanted to keep the lights on, but the Democrats made sure we turned them off?
Absolutely not. All of the blame, frankly, I don't care what the polls show as of right now, all the blame is going to fall on President Trump and the Republicans. It's real simple. The president threw a monkey wrench into the system by demanding funding for the wall. We cannot agree to that. It's not fiscally responsible, and on and on and on. You can't even bill it the entire way. Now, they did throw in CHIP as a sweetener, what I believe a 6-year program extension, which would have been great. But the fact of the matter is, Richard, at the end of the day, nobody's going to take the blame for this except for Trump and the Republicans.
It's actually worse than that for the president. The
I
reason
agree.
why he can't sell that soundbite is because it's counterintuitive. When you're in control of the Congress, the Senate, and the presidency, you're obligated to be able to get something done.
You don't think the nuance that you need 60 votes in the Senate's going to matter?
By your premise, given the attention span of the public and the soundbite world we live in, that's a step too far. What's clear to everybody, you control the Congress, control the presidency, you're failing us, you're putting the government in a place where it's shutting down. That sounds like dysfunction to me.
Lindsey Graham, we've talked about him a lot here, and he's had an interesting role in the last few months. He went from being one of the most vocal critics within his own party of the president to playing golf with him, and he has been frustrated time and again here because a lot of people, frankly, think if you get in the president's ear, he'll do whatever you say as long as you praise him enough and you throw enough, bon mots at him. To that end, you had a frustrated Lindsey Graham talking about the continuation of kicking the can down the road, and it isn't just about the Dreamers in March. It's about the military as well here. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I'm not going to vote for a 30-day continuing resolution. The House said they did their job. How much money did the Defense Department get from the House bill? This is the 4th CR. Every time we have a continuing resolution, it costs the military billions of dollars.
Let's explain, because the public's going to hear, Andrew, the term CR a lot, a continuing resolution. In simple terms, it's kicking the can down the road, but it's more problematic than that.
Well, it's a short-term budget deal instead of the fully fledged budget deal that funds the government for an entire year. The problem is that the current budget, which is a CR, you're basically extending it for a little bit, has these breaks on military spending. If you remember going back to, I think it was 2011 or 2012, the sequester, which limits how much you can expand the funding for it. So that's one of the things that Republicans have been harping on. And most of the time when they're talking about hurting the military in this process, it's because they can't increase the military budget more than they're restricted to by the whole thing. The other impact with the military is that service members won't get paid if the government shuts down. They'll eventually get all their money once the government reopens. But those are the two issues.
But in fairness, the Republicans used today to throw out this military red herring to distract from the dysfunctional issue that we talked about earlier. The fact is the military is going to continue to protect our nation. Essential personnel will continue, but they started the ball rolling with the politics of fear. Fear the shutdown so they could start to play the blame game. They're not going to be able to get away with this 3-card Monte look under the wrong.
Don't you think, listen, maybe they'll get something before midnight tonight to keep this thing going for another 4 or 5 days, okay? I think there's a chance that'll happen. But won't the president, if he's honest with himself and his advisors, look back and say, Jesus, we had a deal that we could have claimed victory. I mean, the deal that Graham and Durbin brought him, first of all, is what he asked for. But second of all, he got some money that he could have said is going to my wall. I'm getting my wall funding. Now, people might say, oh, that's not what happened, but at the end, he could have sold it to his base.
I'm going to say something controversial here, which is hard to do because we're all way out there on our president. But you started with if he's honest with his advisors, and that suggests that he's capable of being honest with himself or his advisors.
But he just wants a deal, Scott. He doesn't care what's in it.
I actually think it's worse than that. I think he is listening to the last person that came in front of him. I think he doesn't have true core politics. And I don't think he has the management skills to be able to maneuver these particular types of situations.
And I think he's terrified to upset his base. They're the ones who put him in office. They're the ones who led him to that upset. I think he's terrified that they might turn on him.
Well, like I said, the clock is ticking here, midnight fast approaching. And with that, we also ask, what lessons should Washington be learning from past shutdowns and all this coming, as we said, on an inopportune date for the president? This is his first anniversary in office. We're going to analyze both with Robert Schlesinger, opinion editor at U.S. News and World Report, straight ahead.